So I'll just get right into it. Thank you so much for sitting down with me.
You're
Um,
welcome.
Saloum. Saloum is a mix of genres combining crime action with a horror twist. What in turn inspired you to utilize mythology when delivering your story?
Um, just the fact that I wanted to talk about it. Simple as it.
Right.
Uh, Now, to go deeper in your question, which is an interesting question. Um, I grew up in Africa with so much stories shared by my family, my ancestors, and even at school and growing up in Africa, of course, in like in every country, you learn about the local myths and the local monsters
Mm-hmm.
and I grew up feeling that we were those stories and those monsters and those heroes were underrepresented. So once I had sufficient skills and power in my craft, I said to myself, okay, nobody's gonna do that for me, so let's do it. And it was a game of bringing everything that I heard, that I knew on the military side, on the political side, and on some mythical side, because in Africa, and especially in Central Africa, we all grow up with black magic, with the knowledge and the feeling and the education of what is the invisible world, as we call that in Africa. So black magic is something quite common, and I just felt like I couldn't, talk about a movie with heroes and monster without putting some black magic into that and without digging into and that's precisely for the Saloum. I wouldn't have go to the Saloum without respecting whatever myths and legends they were having there. So it was a mix between what I wanted and in the same time what was the Saloum about, the kingdom of Saloum, because it is a kingdom in a country. So it's very
Mm-hmm.
interesting to learn its own story, and it's all kings and myths and curses, and that's how Saloum got born.
Yes, and I could definitely tell that you could probably dig into that mythology, and there's so much like it's such a
Yeah,
realm of possibility there.
there's a
Um,
lot.
so yeah, I commend you for just basically scratching the surface in Saloon because it is,
True.
it starts off with action. It's more of a, which leads me into my next question. That first half that has more of a nostalgic action style. That was very reminiscent of perhaps like the early 2000s and 90s. I really liked it because it's been a while since I've seen that style again, and we don't really see that as
Yeah.
much nowadays. So I wanted to ask, what films influenced you the most when making this story come to life?
That's funny because every time that question came, it's always the same answer, which is for once, because before my first feature was very, very influenced by a lot of movies, and this one
Mm-hmm.
I had the influence of the codes that of the kind of movies that I wanted to tell, which is the Western or
Mm-hmm.
thriller or the horror movie. Even if I my personal feeling is that Saloum is more a terror movie than an horror movie, but I just fought against every references that could come my way. So
Mm-hmm.
my work was not to get influence, but to chase influences, because I wanted to do something very fresh, new, but in the same time you still also have to play with the codes. So the codes
Mm-hmm.
were all the codes that you find in all those movies, but the references, I really tried to not be influenced by nothing and just to do my movie and my story. And especially since this is the first of a kind in Africa, I guess, because I didn't
Mm-hmm.
see a movie like that. So
Mm-hmm.
it would have been a betrayal for me to just try to uh, not get influenced, but copy something else. So
Right.
I just fought to have to not do it. Does it make
Mm-hmm.
sense? And in the same way, the only reference that we kept, and that was before writing Saloum, the only thing that we wanted that much was because Pamela, the producer, and myself are very big fans of From Dusk Till Dawn, and we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to take that switch of genre that I felt the first time that I watched the movie. I was like, I wanted to go back to that first feeling when I saw From Dusk Till Dawn, and especially because
Mm-hmm.
at that time there were no trailers, there were no internet. So when the first time that I saw the movie, I just saw the movie, you know, and I
Mm-hmm.
was so fucking impressed by that thing, and I could remember that feeling, and I wanted the audience to have the same feeling. And so that's the why. That's the only reference, I guess, the
Mm-hmm.
precise reference. But after that, it was all about being lost in the Saloum for 5 weeks, not having any internet, computer, and whatever, and just, you know, do what we could do, and what inspired us. So no references, just mine.
Right. The creativity influenced you, the environment
Yeah,
more
yeah,
so.
yeah, yeah, and being lost in the desert.
That'll do it, yeah. Which, speaking of the genre switch, again, something we don't see as often nowadays. How was that approach when you made that switch, not only with the story but visually, because it feels like the movie really does, make a change.
That's interesting because I never thought consciously about that, because I try to well, every time that you're cutting a movie, you always try to have that very precise line of a movie as to have the same tone.
Mm-hmm.
So you can feel like in this movie it was a difficult task to try to have the same tone all the time. Uh, but I won't be, I will be honest with you. I didn't I didn't change the style, the visual style in the second and third act. It's just that still it's becoming an action movie after that, something like an action movie.
Mm-hmm.
So your direction is just following the movement somewhat, you know. So I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't do the action the way I was doing the dinner scenes, for example, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, it just came as a whole, you know. It was not conscious, to be honest with you, but then of course you work your mise en scène to have the best effect on every scene. So yes, there was a mise en scène and a plan, but it was not that big of a plan to say that part is going to be very different visually to this part. I think it's more like, now that they are in that monster world, now we have
Mm-hmm.
something different to show, if it makes sense.
Right.
So everything just came naturally, and you want them in the third act to be in a different world, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
it's a different movie at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it just came naturally, without any big plan, and we didn't have a lot of money anyway, so so it was not a big choice. We
Yes,
just
yes.
did with what we had.
Yes, but obviously the creativity
Worked.
is what it comes through.
You
Exactly,
asked
it
me the question.
works. It
That's the first
absolutely
time that
worked.
somebody asked me the question, and so it works. So I'm very happy. But
Yes, of
I'm not
course.
the genius that you think I am when you ask me that question.
No,
Then
no, it's very interesting because sometimes, in the creative process, like you mentioned, it's just sometimes subconscious. You
yeah,
subconsciously kind of make shifts in trying to maintain that tone, but we as
yeah,
the audience who are not in that process can notice,
yeah,
at least when I saw it, I felt, oh, we have definitely shifted between worlds almost, like you mentioned,
yeah.
especially in that latter half.
Really tried with the editors. We really tried, because it was a 2 hour and 20 minutes movie. The movie that you
Wow.
saw now, 1 hour and 20, yeah,
Mm-hmm,
something
mm-hmm,
like that. So we cut it approximately 1 hour and some minutes,
mm-hmm,
because there was a lot of backstory everywhere.
mm-hmm,
That was the first time that I was writing by myself, because most of the time I'm writing with somebody else.
mm-hmm,
So it was an exercise to again, uh, focus on one person, which was Shaka,
mm-hmm.
his story, which was already the case before, but it was less more. And so now it's about Shaka, more about him, and in the same time, since this guy is as a soldier and a legendary mercenary and was a kid soldier and got what you know.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Let's say here, it was very interesting to show the strength of a character, the charisma that he can have, and the legend that he's carrying with him, but in the same time show that, oh, uh, you can also be human and you can also be broken,
Of
you know.
course. Yes.
And especially in the time that we live in right now, it was interesting for me to say, okay, there was the Me Too movement with the women and all that, and what about the guys then? Especially the guys that we want to put on screen and say, hey, you're the hero, you're that bad guy, badass, blah 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 blah. Okay, where's the flaw in that?
Mm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
and also saying, now that we saw that, now that we can uh, acknowledge the fact that we can have a hero with those kind of flaws. Because I can tell
Mm-hmm.
you in the 90s, you cannot do a movie like that with with this type of
Yeah.
character. With somebody being that strong and say, "Oh, I got," eh, it
Mm-hmm.
would have been weird. And now I think it's the time to also show the same way my fellow female directors are triumphing from showing now the fierceness and the strength of women. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I think on our side, the guys, it's our
Mm-hmm.
job to start working on what's our flaws and not just
Mm-hmm.
what's our strength. You know, so that was where the character of Shaka was very interesting, and that also, of course, brought those different type of tones in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so I know I'm not answering your question entirely,
No,
but
no, it is,
giving
it is
information
really
on
good
that.
to know because it's like exploring and expanding what we perceive as masculinity traditionally.
Exactly, exactly, and the responsibility that I felt with that movie was we don't have a lot of African heroes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to create heroes, but in the same time, I didn't want it to just create heroes. I wanted to create heroes, and in the same time, ask the audience, "What's a hero? What do you
Mm-hmm.
think is a hero? And is vengeance the right thing or not, or yes, you know?" And in the
Mm-hmm.
same time, finishing at the end of the movie and showing that okay, now the hyenas are done, or maybe not, but the leader has changed, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
probably the leader will be the woman, you know. So I there was a lot of things that I wanted to play with, and after that it was about finding the right tone and the right duration for it to not be too much, you know,
Right.
information. So I hope we succeed in that.
Yes, definitely. I noticed there was a much stronger focus with Chaka as a character, and I thought that really that carried the movie really because I thought it
Yeah.
was there was so much to him, and though we did get to see that brotherhood that he had with his fellow mercenaries, that I did notice that focus, and I liked it. I think it worked. Because then, like you mentioned, it would have been like a 2 hour movie.
Well, we could
Right.
have that 2 hour movie, but to be honest, it would have been too messy. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Of
but I
course,
can tell
yes.
you, yeah, they were having a lot of backstories for everybody, which was working on a script, but in a movie, you know, that's
Right.
different. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I don't want to cut it too much into your time, so I'm going to wrap it up with this
No,
last
no.
question.
Yeah.
Where do you see your directing style taking you next?
Oh, what a good question. First of all, I love your toys behind you because I always wanted the
The
hyenas,
Funkos?
the
Right.
hyenas to have to finish as a toy. So that's why I worked so much on their clothes and all that because I want to have a
Mm-hmm.
toy of the hyenas. And it's gonna be a perfect bridge to what's next. What's next? We just shot a feature that we wrapped 2 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be in the same tone. And when I say same tone, it's like action slash comedy. We still
Mm-hmm.
have some comedy in Saloum. At least we tried a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And the next one, which is called Zero, will be in that area. But after that, talking about my direction style or whatever, I'm trying to not think about it because once you
Right.
know what your direction style, you're dead. But that's my theory. So I'm always trying to impress myself or at least to surprise myself, and that's the same thing that I want for the audience. So I think the next one will be even more crazy. But let's see.
That let's see indeed. Once again, thank you so much for sitting down with me. This has been an
Thank you.
absolute pleasure to
Thank you very
discuss.
much. Thank you, Elena.
Hey, thank
Thank
you.